if you've got a particular skill in an area that is going to be in demand, then that makes your value more. So even if it's not cryptocurrency, even if it's AI, okay, then do it for your own personal brand. Have a skill that other people don't. It makes you much more valuable.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. Whether you're at school, sixth form, university, thinking about a career in law, or exploring law careers, you're in the right place. We are the one-stop shop for student lawyers. If you'd like to join the Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com. This episode is sponsored by the University of Law. The University of Law offers a range of undergraduate and postgraduate courses and master's degrees alongside an award-winning pro bono clinic, so you can build up your legal experience while studying. And their experienced career service will enable you to put your best foot forward when launching your legal career. The courses are employment focused and based on real legal practice, so you'll be better prepared for the workplace. Part-time and online study options are available so you can work and study at the same time. Click the link in the description box of the podcast to find out more about the courses on offer. Welcome to the Student Lawyer podcast series. My name's Camilla and I'm a trainee solicitor at Shakespeare Martineau. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the fascinating topic of crypto and blockchain, finding out what cryptocurrency and blockchain actually is, what being a cryptocurrency and blockchain lawyer entails, and much, much more. So make sure you stick around. Today, we're joined by James O'Connell, partner at Mayo Wynne Baxter. James specialises in assisting businesses and anyone wanting to start a business. And he also specialises in cryptocurrency and blockchain. James qualified as a solicitor in both England and Wales and in Hong Kong, and he's practiced law both internationally and in the city. He founded the Institute of Paralegals. He was the first lay member of the City of Westminster Council Standards Committee, and he helped establish an Equality and Human Rights Commission working group to promote diversity in the professions. Amongst all of those achievements and many more, James has published many articles. He's edited an FT law and tax book on management, and he's tutored at Cambridge University's Institute of Continuing Education and was an associate professor of law at City University in Hong Kong. So without further ado, let's welcome James onto the show. Welcome, James. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Camilla.
Thank you. And I wondered if you could start off the episode by providing the listeners with some background into your career so far and how you came to specialise in blockchain and crypto.
Okay. I am the proverbial white-collar drifter. I qualified as a solicitor and then looked at the people who were 50 years older than me and wearing the same sort of suit, just better quality. And I thought, do I want to spend 50 years to be in the next office? So I went off and did lots of other things and came back to the law really after about a 30-year break. And doing all the other things, my own businesses and what have you, has proven really helpful in understanding clients and being a good lawyer. So everything is grist to the mill, really. If you go off and study other stuff, there's usually a way to find it to make it worthwhile and to be of benefit in your practice as a lawyer. So don't be afraid of doing odd stuff.
I think that's a really, really important message to share, because I think that some students, maybe when they are at university, they think that it's, they have to have the training contract lined up straight away and, they have to have a paralegal role. And but actually taking a sort of wider view and doing other things can be really, really beneficial. And you've proven that. So I think that's really, really great to hear. And I think that, most people will have heard of cryptocurrencies due to the popular Bitcoin. I'm sure most of our listeners will have heard of before. But I wondered if you could explain what cryptocurrencies and the blockchain are, and also NFTs as well, because I've heard stuff about that, but again, not entirely sure.
Thanks, Camilla. So blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, where do we start? Well, we start with blockchain. Okay, blockchain is the underlying technology and the thing that's getting everyone excited. Okay, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, smart contracts, they're just manifestations of the blockchain, but they're not really at all the main thing that's getting everyone in business excited and why blockchain is becoming more and more used. Okay, so what is blockchain? Blockchain is a technology, but really, in essence, what it is a series of software configurations, programs, and settings done to an agreed standard. What do I mean by a standard? Well, think about email. Okay, the emails of Apple can be opened by Gmail, that can be opened by Outlook, etc. It's because everyone who does email has an agreed set of software standards, so that their software, their emails can interact with the software and emails of other companies. Okay, blockchain is no different. Okay, it's a set of agreed standards so that there's interoperability and mutual comprehension between different programs created by different people. So it's just software, folks. Okay, and because it's software, it's infinitely variable and allows for an infinite number of interesting things to happen. So the two first manifestations of blockchain that people know about, of course, is cryptocurrencies and NFTs. But actually, the really interesting work is going on behind the scenes on things like shares, bonds, and other assets, digital assets, because blockchain is all about really the fact that the world's moving to online. Okay, online trading, online ownership, online maintenance, online storage. Okay, if an asset can be digitalized, then and it has value, then probably at some point it's going to engage with blockchain. What do I mean by digital asset? An asset, of course, is just a piece of property. Okay, so any asset that can be digitalized, so it could be a photograph you take on your phone. That photograph never exists as a photograph in the old way of it being paper and chemicals and what have you, or negatives. It's just a piece of code. All right. The same when you're an architect and you use a bit of CAD, computer-aided design software, to design a building, or to write some poetry, or to make a YouTube video, okay, or a TikTok video. It's just code, all right? But a lot of it has value, okay? And therefore you want to be able to prove ownership and be able to trade with it. And that's a real problem in the digital world, isn't it? Because you take a photograph of something and it can be copied 1 million times within an hour. Okay, so who's got the original? Okay, for something like a photograph, that may or may not matter. It will matter if the photograph or the video clip becomes iconic, and people will be willing to pay to use it. You know, so Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, that early viral video about the dog Fenton. Okay, there's lots that actually have true monetary value, but once everyone owns a copy, then who's going to buy it from you? Okay, when they can get it free. So what blockchain is about is taking those digital assets, finding a way of proving that you are the owner, and therefore allowing you to enforce your rights and to manipulate it and to trade with it. Okay, so it's about blockchain is about proving digital ownership of assets, on digital assets, and it's a way of selling and dealing with those assets without the necessity of a middleman or a middle person to confirm your ownership. Okay, because you can say you own it, but people lie, right? So how does blockchain work? Okay, so it's a technology that's completely cloud-based. Okay, it's called a distributed ledger. Okay, or often DLT, distributed ledger technology. Distributed because there's no one computer or no one website where the blockchain is held. Okay, it's distributed amongst thousands of computers. Okay, and I won't go into how, why, or how. That's a whole different tech discussion. But just it's distributed amongst thousands of computers, and your first part of the blockchain will be you uploading to that, creating that chain, and uploading to it a block of information, okay, which says this photograph, and the code for it will be given, is owned by this wallet, and I'll explain wallets in a second, and it was created on this date. Okay, at that point, it goes up onto the distributed ledger. It's held on these thousands of computers all over the place. It can only be changed. It can't ever be changed. Once it's on the blockchain, errors and all, it's there for good. Okay. But what can happen is then if you then want to say, for example, sell that photo, the ownership of that photo that's on the blockchain, you will transfer it to someone else to their wallet, and there will be a new link in that chain, a new block of information, which is a next link in the chain, hence blockchain, which says this photograph on this date was transferred to this wallet. Okay. Now, ownership under blockchain comes from having the keys to a wallet. Think of a wallet like a safety deposit box. In a bank, you have a strong room with lots of safety deposit boxes in them. And the boxes can be used by different people at different times, but effectively ownership in that context means you've got the keys to the safety deposit box. If you've got keys, you've got ownership. Okay. Well, it's the same with wallets. Wallets don't have names, like safety deposit boxes don't have names. Safety deposit boxes just have numbers. Okay. And so same with wallets. On the blockchain, there'll be wallet XYZ. Okay. And as long as you've got the keys to access that wallet, then you are in effect the owner of the wallet. Okay. So the transfer will be from wallet XYZ to wallet ABC. Okay. And that's why people complain about blockchain technology being somewhat mysterious and anonymous, because you can have 50 transactions, 1,000 transactions for an item, and all you have is wallet numbers. Now, those wallets are digital, so they don't physically exist anywhere. So you don't know where the owner of the wallet is based, and you don't know who the owner is. But of course, once you find out who the owner is, okay, the current owner, you can track back that wallet, because all of that information is public. So you can always tell from the blockchain what's in the wallet. You just can't tell who owns the wallet. Okay. So the blockchain will say that this is the digital asset in question, and this is when it was created, and this is the wallet that owns it. And then the other links in the chain will tell you if it's been sold or whatever. That is, and the ownership of it, that chain, that blockchain is distributed, so it's very, 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 very hard to hack. Okay, so that's the ownership side of it. So if you have, for example, the digital first edition of Harry Potter, excuse me, then you can say, look, I've got the keys to the wallet and I own it. Okay, so that's the ownership side of it. The getting rid of the middleman side of it, the business advantage of blockchain is that if it as it is being, it extends to things like stock, shares, bonds. Okay, then at the moment, if you want to sell a share, then you have to go back to the company or to a broker, BlackRock or whatever, Fidelity, and they have to update their records. Say BlackRock has to update its records, then it has to update the company whose share it is. They have to change their records. There's an awful lot of admin that goes on. Okay, a lot of opportunity for error, a lot of opportunity for con people to get involved, but lots of cost. Okay, because ultimately someone has to own the register or be responsible for the register that says ultimately who owns what. And usually that will be the company secretary of the company in question. But it's really an expensive process. If you're like BlackRock and you're buying and selling hundreds of thousands of shares and bonds every day, possibly millions sometimes, that means maybe 400,000 transactions have to be physically recorded every day. That's a big cost, big room for error, big room for liability. What if you could get rid of that overnight? What if the transaction was on the blockchain, so it went from buyer A to seller B, and you didn't have to be involved? Think of all the money you would save. Think of all of the risk that you would take off your shoulders. And that's why blockchain is going somewhere. That and the fact that everyone's trading digitally now, and you need something that is going to be able to protect, prove ownership, and reduce costs of transaction. Okay, so that's why there's a future for blockchain lawyers. It's not quite here yet for the most part, but it's going to be huge. Okay, and it's going to be huge because anything that can be traded online needs to be proven online, and blockchain is by far the best way of doing it. So that's sort of why blockchain. So where do cryptocurrencies fit into it, and NFTs? Well, cryptocurrencies are just one use of blockchain. Obviously, one of the things that is used online a lot is payment. How do you pay for things online? If I'm transferring something from, let's say, a share or a Bored Ape NFT from me to you, Camilla, someone has to have control, or not control is the wrong word, has to maintain the internet the online software structure standards to make that happen. Someone has to go to the effort of updating that ledger online, the blockchain. Who's going to do that? It's not you and it's not me, okay? Because if we can do that, we can cheat, okay? So it's done, and I've told you that it's spread out over thousands of computers. So that's where cryptocurrencies come in, and that's where Bitcoin or cryptocurrency miners come in. The miners are the people who will physically make that change for you, and you have to pay them, okay? And cryptocurrencies are the tokens, hence that been called tokens, that are used to pay for that transaction, okay? So let's say, for example, I've got that photograph on the blockchain and I want to sell it to you, okay? I will usually through an exchange, but I can do it privately. Want to transfer it to you, and you'll buy it for, let's say, 1 Ether, which currently is worth about £1,400. I will then pay. I will have to pay 1 Ether plus an additional 0.00001 Ether or something like that, a small amount. It's called gas fee, and that will go to the miner who is actually physically doing the computing work to speak to those thousands of computers and say, hey, here's a transaction. Will you please add a new link to the blockchain showing that Camilla's now the owner of James's wallet contents? Okay. I won't go into any more than that. After that, it becomes a tech issue and you can look it up yourself. So the original role of cryptocurrency and why it was called a currency was because not for something that would be bought and sold as an investment, but as the payment method by which transactions would happen online. And then, of course, because effectively, if you could make a case for people to, you say, well, look, my coin is so good that people are going to be using it for transactions a lot, okay, then it's going to be very popular. And if it's going to be very popular, it will have value. And if it has value, you can invest in it and speculate in it. And that's what happened. So it started off with Bitcoin. It started off with Ethereum. Ether is its name, the actual coin. Ethereum is the blockchain. And then everyone got crazy and started creating thousands of tokens or coins, most of which had absolutely no purpose. But everyone got swept up into the frenzy of buying, selling, and speculating with them. And that's why most coins have little or no value, because they don't actually have a purpose. No one's picked them up, and no one is planning to use them for their original purpose of paying for transactions online. Okay, they were never meant to be converted into real money. They were just meant to be sort of an online. You bought a bag of ether, and then you used it for when you did a transaction. Okay, but it's all gone sort of an unexpected way. So cryptocurrency is just software code. And so the question for lawyers in a lot of jurisdictions and the courts was, if it's just code, what is it? Code is not recognized as property. Code is not recognized as money. So cryptocurrency existed in this completely grey legal area. And bit by bit, countries have decided, like in the UK, they've decided it's an asset and not a currency. That makes a big difference. For example, all of a sudden, capital gains is payable on transactions, whereas if it is money, it would have been income tax. Lots of legal ramifications about ownership of property flows from its designation. And indeed, it varies from country to country. In some places like Ecuador, it's being taken up as cash, because they've got their own cash is so worthless. And then NFTs came along. NFTs are simply the same thing, but instead of it being tokens, it's actually assets. It's actually creations like works of art or installations or soundscapes or whatever. There's lots of different things under NFTs, and they are simply digital assets that were traded. Okay, and really they were created as a proof of concept that you could digitize and claim ownership of digital assets. And to that extent, they've worked fantastically. But again, there's so much loose money swirling around. People jumped on the bandwagon and suddenly started trading them. And of course, it all crashed because it was a bubble. It doesn't. This is where people go wrong. They thought about it being a scam. It wasn't a scam. It was a proof of concept for the trading of assets digitally, and it worked a dream. Okay, the fact that people went crazy and started trading in it is mad. Okay, but that's people for you. So going forward, you're going to be doing a lot of work with crypto as a token, but not necessarily as an investment. The final one of those is a smart contract, which I will deal with later in this talk.
That's really, really interesting. I'd like to take a moment to speak about the University of Law, which is the university I decided to study my LPC at. The University of Law is the sponsor of this podcast and makes it possible for us to continue bringing these episodes to you. So we really appreciate you supporting us by supporting our sponsors. What really sets the University of Law apart from other universities is its belief in training students for the real world from the moment they accept a place. The University of Law's experienced career service and award-winning pro bono clinics offer students the chance to get real-life legal experience which can boost employability. They offer a range of undergraduate and postgraduate legal training and master's degrees designed by qualified experts to help students excel at any stage of their career. Their courses are employment focused, honing key skills in a teaching environment based on real legal practice. Part-time and online study options are also available on many of their courses to help students work and study at the same time. If you'd like to find out more about the courses on offer, please click the link in the description box of the podcast. I think you've kind of covered this a little bit already, but I mean, my next question was really what main challenges do lawyers face in relation to those assets? And you covered them pretty much in the previous question, but I just wondered if there are any other challenges that crypto lawyers face.
Yeah, one of the big challenges is people looking at you like you're deranged. It's like, you're a crypto lawyer, but that's all a scam, isn't it? Here we go again. A lot of people who don't understand crypto or who are very risk adverse just think it's a scam. What they're confusing is that it's a new technology that dishonest people who are always the first to get into something have found ways to exploit, for sure. But it's not a Ponzi scheme. The underlying structure of it, the underlying, I guess you call it system, is very legitimate, and the blockchain technology is very legitimate. Early adopters have quite a few of them have taken advantage of people, nonsense coins and nonsense art and scams like SFX. Sam Fried-Bankman, the guy who was done recently for about $6 billion worth of fraud. But that's, as a lawyer, it's trying to explain to people, no, there are people scamming people with banks, on credit cards all the time, but you don't call banks and credit cards illegitimate. So that's a big issue, is trying to get the public to accept that it's real and genuine and it's here to stay. That'll get easier as time goes on.
Yeah, that just reminded me actually of a podcast I listened to called, I think it's something to do with Crypto Queen. Have you heard of the
Oh,
Crypto
yeah,
Queen?
she was the first.
Yeah, OneCoin. That was a very interesting podcast. So I recommend the listeners check that out if you haven't already.
Yeah.
So do you think that there will be a greater need for cryptocurrency and blockchain lawyers in the future?
Undoubtedly. So big entities like BlackRock, which is the world's largest fund manager, it's got something like $3 trillion under management. They want to what they call tokenize, which means put on the blockchain all of their securities. They've also just issued what's called an estate traded fund, an ETF, along with Fidelity and lots of others, which basically means now you can invest in a fund which its assets is just Bitcoin. And it only launched this month, and it's the biggest, most successful fund they've had in the last 12 months. There's a huge demand out there for Bitcoin. People who live in countries where the banks are untrustworthy, the government's untrustworthy, the tax authorities are corrupt, whatever, they want a way of having their money safe. In fact, a lot of people are going into Bitcoin because they fear the US dollar is going to have a crash. Okay. But one of the big problems in a lot of countries, or not problem, depends on which side of the coin you're on, is a thing called capital flight. So somewhere like China, where people can make a lot of money, okay, but often in the early days at least, they made a lot of money because they were friends with particular officials in government, what have you, and it helped them get into situations where they could do great deals. Russia's another good example of that. Okay, it's the divide. If you know people in government, you get to do juicy deals. Okay, the trouble is that any system that can give you that can take it away just as easily. Okay, if you fall foul of it. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, I mispronounced his name there, but who was one of the oligarchs, and he fell foul of Putin, and then all his money just disappeared. Okay, and he's been in jail. He was in jail for a long time. So if you've got Bitcoin or most other types of coin, you can move your money around very easily, and you can stop that happening to you. So it's something that is going to stay as the world, as you have migration, as you have increased technology, as you have tokenization. There's going to be a lot more work for blockchain lawyers, but there isn't really anything called blockchain law. It's so there is a sort of on the regulatory side. So if you want to do work advising people how to get a license from the Financial Standards Authority, Financial Conduct Authority, rather, sorry, then that you can say that's blockchain law, but it's regulatory. But mostly it's understanding how it works and then applying it to whatever deal you're doing, selling a house, doing probate, or doing a commercial deal. It's not an area of law in itself distinct. It's understanding technology enough to know what some of the issues are that are going to come up. So, for example, with that, where I did for that £19 million deal, it was that working through with the client, not only how we would sell this product, and then that's almost standard terms and conditions for sale. Okay, so. But when was the sale made? What were the refund provisions, etc. But then there were other issues that would come up that would be sort of ancillary to that, about, for example, keeping certain software confidential because use of wallets and things. So it was a natural. It was just terms and conditions that any lawyer would be able to do, except you couldn't do them unless you understood blockchain and some of the issues that it gave rise to. So it's like a lot of things in law. You learn the basic law, then your expertise is how to apply it in an unusual situation.
It's fascinating, and I suppose it really means that everyone who is hoping to practice law will probably come across it in some form or shape or another, in areas like family and probate, which I didn't even think that blockchain would come up in, but I guess now that you've said it, it's kind of obvious. But yeah, it's really interesting. And so, do you think that cryptocurrency will ever become regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority or become a mainstream method of payment?
They're two very different questions. So cryptocurrency is here to stay. So in the States, you could see that the government really didn't like cryptocurrency being used. Okay. So hence the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, spent ages suing people like Coinbase and the other big players. Okay. And really trying to get it all very heavily regulated, almost regulated out of existence. But then the big players like BlackRock and Fidelity said, no, there's money to be made here and there's a demand, and ultimately money talks. So all of these estate traded funds were approved, even though the SEC really, really, really didn't want to have them approved. So it's definitely here to stay. In the UK, we're taking a more cautious approach. We want blockchain because, for example, tokenization of securities will be a really big thing in the city when it happens, and it's going to happen. On the sort of consumer side, they're afraid of people getting burnt on cryptocurrencies, so they've been slower with that. But it will happen because it's here and it's not going away. In terms of use of it, will it be everyday payment? I think it will be, because it's not actually a currency. Okay, that term is misleading. In the UK, crypto is an asset. Okay, so that means you have no right to use it to buy things, use it as money. If the other person accepts it as money, fine, but what you're doing is an asset for asset swap, really. In other countries like I think Ecuador, it's been accepted as actually a currency, so it's traded along with the dollar and the peso and what have you. So it varies from country to country. What I would say is this: what I found as a lawyer, sort of going through the ranks, is if you can offer your firm an expertise that no one else can, and you can make an even half decent case for the fact that it's going to be an area that's going to bring in clients or money or be a skill that's needed, you suddenly become valuable. Okay, because if there's 50 of you all doing corporate law or residential conveyancing, ultimately you're replaceable, aren't you? Because there's 50 of you, then there's 49 because they kick you out, and then they get someone else in to do it. I won't say you're a cog, that's unfair and demeaning, but there's nothing about you that's unique. Okay, if you've got a particular skill in an area that is going to be in demand, then that makes your value more. So even if it's not cryptocurrency, even if it's AI, okay, then do it. Because get big, and just for your own personal brand, have a skill that other people don't. It makes you much more valuable.
Thank you, James. I feel really inspired after that. Brilliant advice. And so, do you think there are any publications that you would recommend that our listeners read if they're interested in learning more about this topic?
There's an awful lot of stuff on the web, and there are an awful lot of I would just type in crypto magazines, crypto newsletters. There's a load of really good free newsletters out there that you can subscribe to, and then you'll pick it up as you go along. What I would say is the technology is developing so quickly that trying to keep up with the tech side of it is like trying to drink from a fire hose. Okay, you just can't do it. It's too much. It's torrent of stuff. It's just too much. So as a lawyer who's got 1,000 other things you've got to learn, you've got to learn your basic contract law and all that sort of stuff, then, just understand what it is and how it works, and some of the issues with it. So 2 examples of that. One is there was a case recently where somebody did what's called an airdrop. An airdrop is when somebody says, I've created a new coin, and what I'm going to do is to promote it. I'm going to give it away free to people, or give away some free. If you like it, then you'll know about it. Then it'll get traction. Then people will trade it. And then the 2 million that I've kept back will suddenly have value. Yeah. So what they do is they say, this is an airdrop. Send us your wallet address and we'll send you 5 Camillas. Okay. Now, because cryptocurrency is just code, what these people did was the code said, when the Camilla goes into your wallet, you then execute this little sub-program that empties a wallet of all the other coins and sends it to this other wallet. So basically, it was a scam. Okay, but that flexibility is really where the cases, business comes in. So some of my cases are people who have been ripped off, and what can they do about it? For example, another area that's going to be very big, I think, is smart contracts. We haven't talked about those, but just very briefly, because it's going to be relevant to your listeners. Okay. One of the attractions of the blockchain technology, because it's code, you can be very flexible. Now, a smart contract is really just a bit of code that says, if A happens, and let's say A is if the value of Apple shares drops below X, okay, then automatically Y will happen, and Y might be £1,000 in your bank is transferred from your bank account to somewhere else. Okay, so so if this happens, then that occurs, and it's all automated online digitally, and of course that's why it's called a smart contract, because once you've written the code and sort of initiated it, you stand back, and either the Apple price will drop below X, in which case this thing will happen, or it won't. But there's no human involvement, and quite often you can't stop it. You set it out there, and it sits there. Now, smart contracts, like a lot in the blockchain world, didn't actually take any notice at all of the law. Okay, so the law of contract law, is it offer acceptance? Are there 5 or 7, depending on how you count them, prerequisites for a valid contract present? Is it legal matter, etc., etc.? None of those apply really, smart contracts, and yet people are using them to send millions of pounds. So as and when and if they screw up, and they will, because it's just code, and look how often Outlook goes wrong, right? And they've spent millions of hours making that program great and work, and it still goes wrong every 30 seconds. So what happens then? And these things then suddenly fall apart, and you've got, or if people have heard of DAOs, which are basically an organization which has nobody in it. It's an automated online company. Okay, that's the theory. So if you and I want to do something together, Camilla, okay, then we can form this DAO online, and that DAO will enter into smart contracts, and we can have this whole business doing all these transactions completely online, nothing in the real world. And you and I aren't doing it as partners. We're doing it through this DAO. Yeah. And the DAO is not registered at the company's house. It's an entity online, an online entity that we've created between us. That's great. I mean, that's so exciting. But it's also nonsense, because it breaks all of the rules of company law as well as the rules of contract law. But people are doing it anyway because it works and it fills a need. And that's where the business is going to be for lawyers, trying to, because this technology is run by people who get so excited, it runs ahead of the law, and they don't stop. And they're like the Egyptian hotel. They don't really care, to be honest. Let's do it and see. There's that saying, it's easier to seek forgiveness than get permission. So they'll do it, and then because they'll do it for 10. I used to work in Hong Kong, and there was a law firm there, very well-known law firm, that looked at the conveyancing process and said, there are X number of steps, and if we cut 4% of those steps, then we're going to make 20% more profit on each conveyance. So they just cut the 4 steps, and they knew that 1 in 100 times that would lead to a problem. And of that 100, 1 in 100 would lead to a complaint that would mean they have to pay compensation. But it also worked out that even if they paid generous compensation, they would make so much more money by cutting the corners and then paying off the problems than not doing it in the first place. So that's what they did. Okay, got them into trouble with the Law Society of Hong Kong, of course, but economically it made perfect sense. And it's the same with this technology. So if you go into blockchain, you'll be dealing with some cutting edge law because they're so far ahead of the law and often not worrying about it. Makes it for very interesting lawyering, I tell you.
Definitely, it sounds like a really, really interesting area and exciting and fast moving. And my final question, do you have any book or film recommendations for the listeners? And it doesn't have to be blockchain related.
Gosh, that's a good question. For film, a very old film called The Chase with either Robert Redford or Paul Newman, I can't remember which. Just an unexpectedly amazing sort of action but thriller film, which no one's ever heard of, but I found it was done by someone who really wanted to use that medium, the sort of thriller shoot 'em up format to ask some really interesting questions. Books, Gormenghast by Mervin Peake, which I've just been persuading my son to read. If you like sort of fantasy stories, but you're not really into dragons and lightsabers and stuff like that, then that's a really, really good book, which is 9/10 set in real life, but just has a little bit of the sort of mystical and the fantastical built into it to make it a wondrous book.
Thank you for those recommendations. I will leave links to those in the description of the podcast, so if readers want to check them out, they can. Thank you so much, James. You've been such an amazing guest. I've learnt so much about the area of blockchain and a lawyer's role in this really exciting area. And I'm sure the listeners have as well. So thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you to all the listeners, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
To hear more of the Student Lawyers podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a star rating and review. If you would like to join The Student Lawyer as a writer, please email hello@thestudentlawyer.com.